welcome everybody to the 9/11 Tribute Museum's virtual My 9/11 story. My name is Kwaku Farrar and I'm staff at the 9/11 Tribute Museum. Today you will be hearing a personal 9/11 story by Cathy Langford. She worked across the street from the World Trade Center and also lived near the World Trade Center in 2001. So she has quite a story, in addition to something else that I won't spoil. So if you have any questions for Cathy as you watch her story, please feel free to add them to the comment section on the applicable platform, and I'll be happy to ask Cathy those questions for you. So without any further ado, I'll give the floor to Cathy to share her personal story.
Okay, thank you. Again, my name is Cathy Langford, and my perspective, my experience of 9/11 was as a resident. We lived just south of the towers in an apartment building called 75 West Street. And our journey is kind of, I'll take you back in time. We were kind of right in the middle of what I'll call like a classic story of the American dream, right? My husband and I had moved to Manhattan about 4 years before. And, you know, we weren't New Yorkers, but this was like the place we wanted to be to launch our careers. And so he was from Australia, from Melbourne, Australia. And I was from Virginia, and we got engaged and we're like, where are we gonna live? And New York, DC or Australia? And we ended up finding he had found a job offer with his company up in New York. And so we thought this is the great time, you know, no kids, to go try out Manhattan. So his office was Deloitte at World Financial Center, which was to the west of the towers. And I had a job at Deutsche Bank, which was on 130 Liberty Street, just south of the towers. So when we were moving to the city, I remember most people think of living on the Upper East Side or Upper West Side, you know, those are kind of trendy areas. But since we both worked downtown, we thought, why sit on the subway for 45 minutes? We thought Lower Manhattan was the place to live. So we rented an apartment on Wall Street, of all places, but it was a tiny apartment. It was a studio apartment. And I don't know if many people know what a studio apartment is, but it's basically, you know, one room, right? The kitchen, the bathroom, and your living room kind of merges into your bedroom. So we had been there for about 3 years, and we decided it was time to make a move. And so we didn't go far. We went a couple blocks over, and we found this amazing apartment. And it had 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. So to us, that was like phenomenal for New York, because that's a lot of space, or, you know, was at that time. And one of the features we loved about the apartment was it had 17 windows. We went from 1 window in our studio. It had 17 windows because the apartment jutted out at the top. It had like an L shape. So ours stuck out on one of those, or more of a U shape. And so there were windows on like 3 sides of the apartment. So we thought, this is amazing. And then we loved the view. When you looked north, you looked up at the World Trade Centers. And we thought this was great because it's such a landmark. And, you know, when Guy would have friends from Australia come, or if I had friends from down south come, it was a landmark that everybody wanted to see. It was so easy to access. You know, we just walked out of our apartment, walked across the street, and enjoyed the World Trade Center. And I don't know if most people know, there was a mall on the bottom, so a little shopping center there. And then between the towers, they would have sometimes like live music or farmers markets. And pre 9/11, you could go to the top. There was a bar called the Greatest Bar on Earth, and there was no cover charge. You just went in, you took the direct elevator up, and you could have a great time and see amazing views of Manhattan and the 5 boroughs from there. So we were thrilled to be there. As I said, I worked at Deutsche Bank. It was First Bankers Trust, for those of you who remember investment banking, which became BT Alex Brown, and then it became Deutsche Bank. So I was supposed to be at work on September 11th. I remember it was a beautiful day. Everyone will tell you that. The skies were blue, it was super crisp outside. And I had called into work because I wasn't feeling well. I thought, I've been up all night. I'll take the day off. So I remember coming into the kitchen, and in the kitchen, I had just made some breakfast, and you don't forget any of the details from that day. I had a plate and it had some whole wheat toast on. And I remember kind of waiting for the butter to melt. It was so hard on the toast. And all of a sudden I heard and I felt a horrible explosion. And I just yelled out, I said, bomb. I said, a bomb was going off. I thought our building, you know, something had blown up in the basement or something. But then we looked outside and we saw that it was one of the towers, and just smoke started pouring out. And we took some pictures, and We took pictures with a camera that had film. This is before the age of digital photography. So that was the view. One tower was on fire. I remember, it sounds silly, but I called 911 just in case they didn't know. And the news reports were saying it was a small plane, but we all thought, well, it had to be intentional because it was such a clear day and you couldn't miss those. And immediately it was bad. There were things falling out of the towers. There were people falling out of the towers. So we were really kind of stunned, but we just watched and kind of observed. And then all of a sudden, about 15 minutes later, we heard the sound of jet engines, way too loud and way too close. And once the second tower was hit, I remember my mind and my body went eerily still. And a guy yelled out, he said, get dressed, we're getting out of here. And because we were still in my pajamas. And I made a phone call. I called my mom and I said, Mom, she didn't pick up. And I remember I was like, why, where is she? It was back in the day of answering machines. So I left a message and I said, Mom, the World Trade Center has been hit by 2 planes. And I said, there are bodies everywhere. And I said, I think I'm in labor. We'd stayed home from work because I was up all night and I was pregnant with our first child. I was due September 24th. And I thought first babies always came late, but I was in labor, early labor. And like I said, I think everything just kind of stopped. And I remember thinking, okay, we need to get dressed. We need to pack something. We need to leave. And I remember brushing my teeth. Everything sort of happened in slow motion at that point. And I tell my fellow tribute docents, I can still feel the weight of the tears that were coming down because we knew we were in a bad way, that somebody was, we were under attack and something bad has happened. And this is a picture of now both towers on fire. So at this point, we grab our bags, or we grab a backpack, we packed a towel, wallet, just anything quickly. I didn't have a bag packed for the hospital. I should have, but I didn't. So we went down to the lobby of our building and we knew we should leave. We had to leave, but I didn't want to because there was glass and debris and things falling out of the building. And this is early on, but early, you could just see like already the streets were being covered with ash and things were just flying out. So I was like, something will hit us in the head. Like it's not really safe to leave the building. I remember police officers coming by, running along, running up to the towers. And there were 2 ways out of the building. 2 entrances or exits, I could say. And we just really stayed there and people started to kind of accumulate in the lobby. Like people started coming down from their apartments and nobody really knew kind of what to do at the time. Like, should we leave now or should we just wait it out? And there was no guidance. Nobody knew what was going on. And as we were waiting, all of a sudden, I can only describe the sound as sort of maybe an avalanche or if you were laying under a subway car, like this horrible roar. And I just assumed that our building had been hit and now it was collapsing. The lights went out, everything went black, and then just smoke and ash started like filling into the building. And during that rumbling sound, I remember a guy putting his hands over me, like to protect me if something fell. And I remember I said to him, I said, I love you. And I said, I'm sorry, because I thought that was it. But then the light kind of started to reappear and it was all smoky, or it was really like ash kind of settling in. And as we kind of looked around, we realized we were okay. Our building was still okay. And then people started to come in covered in this ash. And we didn't realize what had happened. We didn't realize the South Tower had collapsed. It was just sort of just uncertainty, but people coming in and really distraught. And I remember trying to console one person saying, it'll be okay, like you'll find your brother, but really not understanding what had just happened outside. So again, we stayed there. We went into the basement thinking that might be a good place to stay, but really lots of uncertainty, injured people now coming into the lobby. And more time goes by. And then somebody said, listen, everybody needs to leave. The building might not be safe. There might be gas leaks. You all need to leave. So we all started walking out. to the entrance that I would think on my left side was towards the West Side Highway. Our building was like here, West Side Highway, and then Battery Park. And no sooner did we step out onto like the sidewalk near the West Side Highway. Now the West Side Highway is normally a busy highway. In the morning, it would have been filled with cars. I remember it was absolutely silent, except for a couple sirens going off from like an ambulance. And remember a photographer kind of in the middle of the road running up. And then all of a sudden we heard the same horrible sound. And someone said, just run south, run south. So what was happening was now the North Tower was collapsing. So we just started to run, and we kind of took shelter. We turned into like a street or an alleyway and kind of hid in a parking lot. And then across the street, I remember a police officer kind of motioned for us to come over. So we ended up following the police officer. There was people gathering in a random apartment building. I don't even remember which one it was, but we waited there, and someone said, oh, someone has opened their apartment. So just again, random people had taken their dogs, their pets, and we were just kind of taking shelter in this woman's apartment. It was only at that time where we put the news on, and we had realized that both towers had fallen, which we never could have imagined. Even when they were on fire, I don't think I ever thought that they were going to fall, that somebody would do this intentionally. So we waited there, and an ambulance eventually came. And I remember they came in and they said, we're here for the pregnant lady. And I raised my hand and said, that's me. So they put us in the ambulance, and another woman came with us. I think she was about 5 months pregnant. So we got in the ambulance. I remember that was pretty scary too, because we went through the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, or the tunnel that's at the end of Manhattan, but it's underground. And it was just filled with smoke. And I thought, oh my gosh, what if we get trapped here? But they eventually brought us to a hospital called Beth Israel. And I remember when the doors kind of opened up, there were all these doctors and nurses sort of waiting to help. And I don't know if it was a letdown or whatever. Like I could walk. I was just, having a baby. I wasn't injured. I know a lot of doctors and nurses stayed to help, but there weren't that many survivors to help. So they checked us in. And I remember going to the maternity unit, and the doctor said to me, Mrs. Langford, the baby is not in distress. The baby sounds fine. You can have your baby here. You're welcome to stay, or you could get to your regular hospital, or you could leave. They're evacuating Lower Manhattan, so you could go to Staten Island or New Jersey. And in a moment of clarity, I thought, I'm not having this baby in New Jersey. I was staying in New York. So we stayed there. And the other thing that crossed my mind too, as we had time to kind of digest what had happened, we were out of danger now. We were up, in the hospital. I remember she said, the baby's not in distress, but I remember I'm in distress. So we just decided we would check out of the hospital and we would start walking. We walked up to NYU Tisch. I think that's in the 30s on the east side. And we checked in and we found the two doctors in the practice that I was with. And I remember really feeling relief when I saw them. And the day ended, and around 2 a.m. on September 12th, we had a beautiful baby girl that we named Grace. And Grace is now 19 years old. Sorry, I get really teared up. But we never went back to the apartment to live. Our apartment was really in ground zero. I can show you, if I'm not sure if you can make this out, you probably can't. But if that's now, the towers now that are gone and cleaned up, this is the World Financial Center where Guy worked, and that's our apartment building right there. So, I mean, without power, the whole area was kind of, closed. It was unsafe. We went back a couple months later to get some personal belongings out. We had some pets that were rescued by some kind people who went in like a week later. And this is the bathroom. This is the ash that was in the apartment. And those little footprints are the cat's footprints. But they made it out okay. So we eventually, as fate would have it, we ended up moving to New Jersey with Grace after she was born. But That's my story. I did go back to work at Deloitte in World Financial eventually. I went back to Deutsche Bank a little bit. They opened offices in the Midtown office. The Deutsche Bank building, 130 Liberty Street, was ultimately destroyed, taken down. And that's my story. I can't believe it's been 20 years. It feels like it was yesterday. But thank you for listening, and please reach out with any questions.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. I mean, like I was telling you earlier, like this is my first time hearing your story in full. So I'm just like, wow, wow. Like it's just so, hearing everybody's story, it just puts all these different pieces together and just really rebuilds my consciousness and knowledge of, what happened that day, which is, really the beauty of tribute. So, thank you. It's an honor to hear your story. And also, just the symbolism of Grace being born on the 12th, and the fact that we had so many people who came into the city just to help out, on the 12th, people donating blood, people just coming to the pile to, do whatever they could. It's just, the symbolism is just something else. And, I'm glad that, Grace, you made it. I'm glad that, Grace made it okay. And it's just, it's amazing. It's, yeah, like you said, it's amazing to really think that this was 19 years ago. Like like if you remember, if you were alive and, of a certain age, like you remember it like it was yesterday. And it's just so crazy that it's been so long. But, it's important that we continue to tell these stories because,
Yeah.
there are people who, the people, survivors, family members, like everybody who is a part of this story is always going to be affected by this. And this is something that we can't just, relegate to history, the history books, and say, well, this happened this long ago, it doesn't matter anymore. These people are still affected by this. People are still getting sick, from being on the panel, so really continuing to tell these stories is really important, especially for the generation that was not born or too young to remember, and really, understand what was going on. So,
Yeah. I was reflecting last night about, I hadn't, obviously I choked up, I haven't told the story in a long, long time, but I feel like it's important. It's just 9/11 now, we kind of label it 9/11, but it really was, an attack on our country.
Yeah.
And I feel I need to keep telling the story. Mine has a happy ending, but over 3,000 people killed, intentionally, murdered there. It really is a serious event that we need to remember, that people did this intentionally and could do it again.
Absolutely. If you don't learn from history, it's bound to repeat itself. So
Right.
sharing these stories and giving people that personal connection so they understand,
Yeah.
that these 3,000 people, they were people. They're not just names that you read. Like these were people,
Yeah.
families, friends, coworkers.
Like you said, and that's the beauty of tribute, that you can get more granular. Yeah.
Alrighty, so as Cathy did note, if you have any questions for her after watching this video, please feel free to add them to the comment section. And with that, we will wrap up today's program. Cathy, once again, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's been an honor.
Thank you.